Do you get to game two and feel a little lost with how you should be sideboarding? Maybe you have an idea of a sideboarding guide, but it's never as effective as the person who conveys it to you. What's up, guys? KTOD Maddie here, hitting you with my tips, tricks, and philosophies on sideboarding. After this video, you won't need a sideboarding guide because your sideboard is going to have a purpose, your deck list is going to have a purpose, and you are going to understand the hows and the whys, not the whats. You are going to understand that your sideboard is more than 10 cards. And I'm going to show you two unique situations where the rules go out of the window and you just have to make a determination based off a few factors that I will outline. So stay tuned for that because that is probably the biggest key to sideboarding effectively, the unique situations. All right, so the first concept here, and it's not a new one if you're following a lot of our channel and some other content creators, the idea that your sideboard is not 10 cards. What do you mean, Matt? How is my sideboard not 10 cards? That's in the rules. Well, you can pre-board in your main deck. Your deck is 60 cards, not 50 and then 10. So what happens in a lot of our decks and a lot of other good players in the game is that sometimes that they have cards that are situational that would be in a sideboard, but they're putting them in the main deck because they're hedging towards that matchup or that type of matchup. I can give you an example. One of my favorite cards to main deck, not Vigilance, is Make an Opening. I think there are certain decks in the meta that are a Make an Opening deck list check. If you don't have Make an Opening, they can steal game one from you. I don't want to live in that world. I want to win game one. If I win game one, I don't think I win 1 out of 2 post board. You know what I'm saying? So Make an Opening for me is a narrow card that would fit the idea of a sideboard. It's coming in for certain types of matchups. However, I've identified that I want to, insulate myself against decks where that's effective. Lurking Tie Phantom, that's the biggest one right now, right? Lurking Tie Phantom, all the two booty cuties with shields that get cunning. I don't want to be dealing with those. The village people can really gum me up a little bit, and I want to zap them right away. And then obviously it has wider applications in some helping out with combat math and healing. But, I'm identifying that I don't want to lose to Lurking Tie Phantom and a certain couple other cards, so I'm going to go ahead and insulate myself towards that. So that is the idea there, that your sideboard is more than 10 cards. Another one in our 30-point Kira deck, which you can find in Mike's video. Mike's best decks video. I talk about it on this channel. I'm sure by now we either have or will soon have an update to that deck. I'm kind of just talking about it. But in that deck, I had 1 resupply in the sideboard. And that was because the way that I wanted to play my deck, I wanted to hedge against some certain matchups game one. And then in a lot of matchups, I had, these dead cards that were hedged for very specific circumstances. So it was always bringing in the resupply. It wasn't, one of those things where it was like I bring 1 resupply and this, it was like I always brought it in. But that's okay because I wanted to hedge and I wanted to take my 60 and move a few things around. Those are the 2 best examples I have of that concept. But as you build decks or as you look at decks out there and you see toolboxy strategies or you see kind of, a lot of one-ofs like I do, sometimes like 1 takedown in the main deck, 1 takedown in the sideboard. And then if I'm also playing like Fell the Dragon, right? Okay, they don't have the big baddies. I make that swap really easily, right? So it's a holistic view when you're building a deck or tweaking a deck that you find online. Consider the whole 60 cards and not just 50-10. Booyah. All right, the next concept I think will really help you is understanding not what you sideboard, but why you're sideboarding it. I talked about the takedown, that kind of swap, and I talked about the resupply. Understanding why those are in there, I want to have more ramp versus like 1 resupply comes in against Bosk. 1 1 super laser tech comes out against Bosk in the Kira deck. You'd be looking at that and it's hard to understand why, right? I'm switching in kind of the same card. And, as you give it some thought, you can probably realize, like, okay, I still want to ramp, but I don't want them to take out my, what's it called? My super laser tech and get a free bounty on him, right? So I insulated that way. I did that because I knew why those cards were in there, but I didn't have that game plan. Like, personally, I made the deck, right? With the team, we made the deck. I didn't have that game plan going into it, but I knew why I had certain cards in the deck, and I was able to, make that plan on the fly based off what he played. Whereas if I'm just following a guide, like, there's so many different factors, and I'm going to talk about this a little more, but what cards were in their specific deck, not just the strategy, not just boss green, but his boss green, right? Or, um, you know, how they played that deck. Like, oh, even though he was playing, the bounty deck, he actually just played an on curve deck and tried to race me. Okay, how does that affect how I'm going to play? So knowing why each card is in there and what they can do versus just like a very rote like sideboarding guide, you're gonna be able to make these decisions on the fly because as this game grows and there's more rare bases and more leaders, there's so many more rare, more leaders coming in. You're not gonna have to be able to have 17 different sideboarding guides. You know what I mean? And yeah, okay, the meta will kind of push a lot of those decks out, but there's gonna be more randomness. And you can't always account for that. I didn't plan to play against two red palps, but I knew why I had cards in my sideboard. So we'll use the green Kira as an example. Two palp returns. Why are they in there? For attrition grindy matchups or against discard. Okay, that seems like it would be good against red palp, but let's extrapolate a little more. Like, where else is that good? Ray, right? Oh, did he pillage me game two, or do I think he's gonna pillage me game two? Was he always asking me how many cards were in my hand in the Bosk deck? Maybe Bosk brings it in. Oh shoot, okay. I didn't think of that. Right? His main strategy is just kind of bounties and ramp, but maybe he's bringing that in, and more on stuff like that with unique situations. Top target, I brought that in against Sabine decks obviously, but again, Bosk was racing me that match, so I was like, okay, I need these when I got to stabilize. The way the game played out, he freaking kicked my ass game one so bad that I was like, oh man, I need a little more insulation here. So I brought in my vigilances, um, and I brought in my top targets, and then some of those pre-boarded cards I took out, like entrenched or like, make an opening. But that was a decision I made on the fly because I knew my deck and I knew why the things were in the main deck and why the things were in the sideboard. So, kind of to reiterate this point and sum up, know why cards are in your deck and how your opponent is playing. I talked about how different factors of how they played, like against Bosk, he's asking me what cards in my hand. He was playing a certain way, using what happens on the mat in the game, and then knowing why cards are in your deck between your 50 and your 10, the holistic 60. That's the how and the why that you need to consider when choosing sideboard options, and that'll let you make more sideboard plans on the fly when you run into stuff you just can't expect, or if someone is playing in a different way than you're used to on your playtesting games. All right, so the final point is about unique situations that can change your game plan. The hows and the whys, looking at your deck holistically, that's all going to set you up to kind of understand this better, but these are the 2 points. Sometimes whether you're on the play or the draw matters. Mike and I recently did some recording games, and he was considering sideboarding against me. He lost game one, and he was going to board out Queel because he was so worried about, he's pretty easy to remove. But as he, thought about it and the fact that he was on the play, he realized from what he knows about my strategy and what he saw in game one that he could actually keep Queel in game two because he didn't think I had a way to remove him. And what happened? He played Queel on the first turn. He upgraded him with Ray, who's playing Blue Ray, and Queel drew him like 2 cards, and he was ahead on cards the whole game. I could never discard anything. He was winning every attrition war. He got, multiple Obi-Wans and stuff like that because he had, he was up on cards. Like, that's what's going to happen. So that was a unique situation where he identified being on the play versus the draw and the types of cards that are available to me. And then in game 3, he has to board him out because he's easy to remove. or maybe not, but that's kind of the idea there. Another unique situation that comes up is kind of like another level thinking, idea and that'll come up a lot in these discussions. Is, let's say, like, if your opponent's playing Dark Saber and you bring in, removal, or vice versa. So if I'm the Dark Saber boy and I use it in game one, it wins me the game. I know they're going to be gunning for it. I'm probably going to sideboard it out, right, to negate what they're doing. However, if they beat me game two and they don't see a Dark Saber all game, or, it, I mean, I wouldn't go and say I took it out. I think that's a little tacky, and they can kind of level you and realize that maybe you're angling for something. But if they identify that you didn't bring it in, they might take that stuff out and you might put it back in. So it's this game of chicken that you can sometimes play with sideboarding cards. Another way that can come up is through playstyle. If you are in a control mirror, you either need to try to be the more controlling deck or be the aggro deck. And you can actually play around with that. So, in game two, if you realize they have way too much top end and they're wicked prepared for that matchup, maybe you have a way through your deck building or whatever that you can actually go lower than them in another game and kind of steal it that way. So that's what I'm talking about. There's these unique situations, which is why you need to know, number one, build your deck holistically, know why cards are in your deck, how your opponent is playing, and how to, not only how your opponent is playing, but how different cards interact and how you might want to change up your strategy. And then identifying, this is actually a time I can break the rules, or this is a time where I can use these other factors in my decision making. And that is a huge part of the strategy of making a on the fly, or even baking it in, baking the strategy in, but knowing when to deploy it, because you can't deploy the same strategy all the time. So these unique situations will come up. You'll be armed, with all this information, and this kind of thought process is so much more important than somebody giving you the deck listing guide, asking you on 10 different matchups, the minuses and the plus. That can help you in the short term, but really, I think that it's going to stunt your growth as a player, and also it's going to lead to you not understanding the theory behind it, and then it's not going to be as effective anyway. So you're better off taking the time there, learning the hows and the whys, and then building your own strategy, because every match is different. Everyone's deck list is going to be a little bit different. And so having those rote things, I think, is a waste of time, and you should just be critically thinking given these parameters that I just gave you. And I think you're going to win a lot more matches. You're going to win a lot more sideboarded games, which is important. So maybe everyone stop testing game ones, you know what I'm talking about, and get in the sideboard and get practicing. All right, that's it from me, guys. Hit the bell, hit the like, get in there. Let me know what more you want to see from me on the personal channel. I think we're getting some good momentum, and I want to keep it going. So would love to hear what you want to see, what's working. Feedback is a gift. And yeah, till next time.